Hello, DeMatha Nation. My name is Ben Fleri, class of 2011, and current staff member here at DeMatha. Over the past few months, we've interviewed several notable stags, not just as a way to showcase the various successes from the school, but also to give a chance to keep the DeMatha community connected during these times we're living with the pandemic. I'm joined today by fellow staff member Connor Glowacki and longtime faculty member Neal Murphy, who will be helping me conduct today's interview with legendary current head men's basketball coach here at DeMatha, Coach Mike Jones. Coach Jones graduated from DeMatha in 1991 and went on to have an excellent collegiate career at Old Dominion University, where he was an all-conference performer and led them to 4 postseason tournaments, including 2 NCAA appearances. After graduating from ODU, Jones was signed as a free agent by the Indiana Pacers, and after his release, played pro basketball in the CBA and the International Basketball Association, where he was an all-league first-teamer in the 1997 season. He also played pro in Hong Kong, Portugal, Finland, and the Dominican Republic. In 1998, Jones was hired at DeMatha to work in the counseling office, as well as serve on Coach Wooten's staff as an assistant. And in 2002, Mike Jones was named the interim head basketball coach upon Coach Wooten's retirement, and was later named head coach for good a year later. Coach Jones has since carried on DeMatha's basketball tradition. In his 18 years as head basketball coach, Mike Jones has won an impressive 500 games, and in that 500th game came against Paul VI in the WCAC championship this past season. So congrats, Coach. His teams have won a national title in 2006 and 8 conference championships, WCAC championships in that time span, all the while playing in arguably the most competitive conference in the nation. Coach Jones was named Coach of the Year by the Washington Post in 2005 and has served as a head coach at the prestigious Nike Hoop Summit. Recently, Coach was named as a co-recipient of the 2019 USA Basketball Developmental Coach of the Year Award. And he got a start with USA Basketball as an assistant for the 2004 Youth Development Festival East team, and has since won 3 gold medals with USA Basketball men's junior national teams. And in 2017, Coach Jones was inducted into the DeMatha Hall of Fame. Now, before we get started with Coach, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I would just like for all of us just to take a moment, have a moment of silence for John Austin, who's a class of DeMatha, 1962, who just recently passed away. John Austin was a legendary DeMatha figure and a trailblazer for our community, as well as for Boston College and so on. So if we could all just take a moment and remember John Austin. Great, thank you guys. So that being said, we would like to introduce Coach Mike Jones. Coach, thank you for joining us on the call today. Before we get started with you, Coach, just want to just see how you're doing and how you've sort of been handling life throughout the pandemic, and if there's anything in particular that's been keeping you busy.
So I'm doing fine. Obviously, just like everybody else, this has been an adjustment for myself and my family, but I'm not complaining. Life is what it is, and I think one of the things about DeMatha and us as Stag men, we're resilient. So no matter what's thrown at us, we figure it out. So I get on campus a few times a week, which I'm happy to. Just recently, our gym floor was redone, and we're able to start doing some skill work with our guys. No competition, but skill work. And I mean, to be honest with you, I'm just so happy to be able to see their faces and be able to talk to them and just be around them. So, I feel like, for lack of a better way of saying it, I'm, at least getting close to back being whole again with the season, hopefully starting within the next 2 months.
Awesome, Coach. Yeah, we're looking forward to that. That court looks sharp, man. I like the change they did to it. It looks clean. So, kind of my first question. So, Coach, you obviously you recently won your 500th game. in a victory over Paul VI for the WCAC championship back in February. Now, shortly after we got hit with the pandemic, but just first of all, obviously want to congratulate you on this on an amazing accomplishment. Just how does it feel to reach that milestone, and maybe if you could speak on some of the hard work or perseverance that it takes to reach that feat, especially at such a quick time frame. I mean, this is only your 18th season at DeMatha, and you're already at 500 games. So if you could just maybe speak on some of that success.
Well, that's because they let us play 35 games a year. So don't mistake that. That's because we get to play a lot. I look at it as, obviously I'm very proud of that. Like I'd be lying if I did not say that. But in the mode of what Coach Wooten would say in this situation, I would just repeat it because it's true. We've had a lot of really good players. And I've been fortunate enough to have some really good guys coach with me. And honestly, truthfully, as sincere as I possibly can be, you can't do it without both of those. Like, I don't care how good of a coach you think you are or how good of a staff you have. If you don't have the players, you're not going to win. And then, for me and the competitive league we play in and with the national schedule we play, if it were not for the guys that are on the sideline with me, 500 would not be something that we, would even be able to fathom. So I'm just thankful and blessed that the DeMatha culture and our program allows for both of those things to be true. And I know I can count on.
Mike, everyone knows you played and coached under Morgan Wooten. How did you handle the pressure when you first took over the job for Morgan, and what were some of the lessons especially coaching from Morgan, that you brought with you into your career?
Great question, Connor. I really believe that following behind coach, I've always kind of, when I played and when I coached, like I don't like the term pressure. Like, I don't like it. I don't talk like there's pressure. I just hate that term. I do believe that one of the mantras that I live by is, in the toughest of times, you don't rise to the occasion. You sink to the level of your training or your preparedness. And honestly, in those so-called pressure-packed moments or pressure-packed instances, you're going to be who you are. Like, it's not like you're going to be something you've never been before. And I believe that Coach Wooten was the epitome of that. And learning from him, playing for him, and then coaching with him, the one thing that was always impressive to me was just he was always under control. He was always with class. And, Murph is on here. I know Murph can, recall a couple of times where I did not display that, but it was something that I was striving to be. And I think I do a much better job of that now. But the pressure, like, I don't like that term. I just know that there was a standard set by Coach Wooten that I don't think I will ever reach, but I will always work hard towards that end because that's what he would want.
All right, Mike, everybody knows you played for Morgan for 2 years. Your JV year, I forget who your coach was, but I heard he was unbelievable. But when you were a freshman, who were your freshman coaches?
My freshman coach was Mike Hibbs, head coach, and Dr. Daniel McMahon, two DeMatha graduates. One is my current boss, and I have very fond memories of that. Just real quick, I actually just told this story to a guy doing a piece on USA basketball. Like, I came from Kettering Middle School and Kettering Largo Boys and Girls Club. And I remember trying out for the freshman team. I believe back then we had to split the alphabet because there were so many. We had to go over to Glen Ridge Elementary School over in Landover Hills for practice and for tryouts. And coming from where I came from, I thought I was really good. I got to DeMatha and learned that I did not even know how to play basketball. Like, I was somebody who knew the concept of the game, but I did not know how to play. And I did not think I was going to make the team. And I can remember very fondly, like it was yesterday, Mike Hibbs walking into the locker room at Glen Ridge Elementary and throwing a practice jersey to me. And I remember my first question was, I looked at it, saw that it was a practice jersey, and then say, so do I give this back to you after practice today? And he looked at me and was like, why would you do that? And I was like, I mean, I can take it home and clean it. I can give it to you tomorrow. And he was just like, no. And he was like, you made the team. And like, I mean, other than Dan McMahon telling me that I was going to be the coach at DeMatha, I don't remember having that much emotion about accomplishing something. It was like, yeah, Mike Hibbs and Dan McMahon.
Now, I don't know if this is true or not. This could be, a myth, but evidently at one point, Dan thought you shouldn't have made the team either. And at that point, Morgan suggested that maybe Dan should think about a career in administration. So Morgan, once again, 2 DeMatha careers made in that one conversation.
Yeah, I don't know if that's urban legend or what, but I mean, because honestly, looking back on it, and I can look at the guys that trial for the teams now, like I literally did not know what I was doing. Like I was tall and skinny, and I like to think I played hard, but skill-wise, I couldn't make a left-hand layup when tryouts began. And I remember Hibby, in his way, making it very clear that I wasn't ever going to see a minute on the floor unless I could. And I remember my entire Christmas break that year, I came back and I was able to make like left-handed jump shots because I worked on it so much because I was so embarrassed.
That's great. Thanks, Coach. So now at this time, we'd like to open the floor to the audience to ask Coach Jones some questions. So the way this works, if you can just on the chat bar at the bottom, just write your name and the year you graduated from DeMatha along with your question, and then myself or Connor Glowacki will relay those messages from Coach Jones. So you can fire away, start writing your questions. Coach, I have a question here from Bobby Hill, class of 1988. And he says, when you got the job as coach, who did you call first? And then who gave you the best advice about following a legend like Coach Wooten?
So I have I guess, call it checkered past in terms of my personal life. So my first wife, I'm pretty sure I called her first because at the time, I think she really knew how important or how much I wanted to be the head coach at DeMatha. So I believe I called her first. And then the advice I got, honestly, it was the same advice, and it came from 2 different people. One was Coach Wooten, and the other was Gary Williams. And they both basically told me to be myself. I have somewhere the little note that Gary Williams sent to me that basically said, it's really quick, congratulations, Mike, don't forget, be yourself, and then sign Gary Williams. And I think what both of them were trying to get me to understand, and Coach Wooten obviously knew it to the T, that I could not try to be him. The way that he had done things obviously was incredibly successful. But, one of the things that Coach Wooten always talked about was being genuine, and kids will know if you're not being genuine. So it was very important to me to really try to be myself. And again, my first few years, it was hard because I didn't even know who I was as a coach. And, having guys like Neal Murphy by my side and Reggie Vini by my side, guys that first of all knew the game very well, but then also knew me as a person. They helped tremendously for me to kind of find my way as a coach.
Mike, I wanted to ask a question from myself personally. Everyone knows how competitive the WCAC is as a conference nationally, and it seems to be getting even more attention in Prince George's County hoops with the documentary over the summer, Something in the Water, produced by Kevin Durant. Just what has it been like for you playing and coaching in the WCAC, which, you can make the argument, the toughest conference in the country?
I think it has made me, first of all, appreciate where we come from, appreciate, DMV basketball or Prince George's County basketball as a whole, but also appreciate, DeMatha. And I say that because, if you think about it, like we're always in the mix. And for a conference to be as competitive as the WCAC is, and with all the talent that our area has, so every team in our league has the talent. But it's unbelievable that before I was the coach, DeMatha was always right there, like always. Like they were always a contender, or if they didn't win, they were the runner-up. And I mean that's a heck of a standard, but we are the consistency mark. We are what I would like to think everybody else is striving to be, because we're always in the mix. And save for a hiccup here and there, like, DeMatha is always going to be relevant. And I'm proud of that. But again, it's because of Coach Wooten.
Thanks, Coach. Next question from Phil Berger, class of '96. He says, if you had a magic wand, is there anything you would change about youth basketball before the high school level? And then he's asked any advice for parents with kids who would like to play at the high school level.
So, magic wand, I would ban parents from going to games until, if you could, until they're on the varsity basketball team at a high school. Like, let them play, especially before high school. Let them play, let them have fun, let them be coached by their coaches, and just to take that pressure off of them wanting to please you as a parent, and just allow them to like enjoy the game of basketball. It's a beautiful game. It's fun. It's life. Like, you learn how to play with others. You learn how to communicate. You learn how to compete. You learn how to fight back, when things aren't going your way. You learn to be resilient. You learn so many things from the game. And you can learn those, in my opinion, you can learn those things much better without the pressure of mom or dad or, whatever family member you have there that's yelling at you, that's questioning the coach, that's trying to coach you. If I had a magic wand, I would do that. And then question.
So advice for any parents that would like to play, or advice for parents with kids that would like to play at the high school level.
Just first of all, make sure that they understand that you're their fan and not their coach. But then, I believe in giving every kid every resource that you're able to give them, and if they want to do something. So if they want to be an artist, you get them the materials they need to draw, to paint, to sculpt, to write, whatever it is. Like, you give them that, and then you encourage them to do it. For kids, like, especially mental health being such a huge thing now. And, my relationship with my family and the younger people that I've come across, and then all the kids that I've come to coach, I do believe that mental health is something that is affected at a very young age. What you tell kids, what you expose them to, how you support them, is incredibly impactful in the way they're going to receive teaching, coaching, and leadership in their future. And if you can just be that positive, that encouraging person, you discipline when you have to, but just really, really, really take advantage of the opportunity to pour into them and to build them up. I think you're setting them up to be better when they're in a team environment or a group environment where they have to play a role, whether they're the star or, the last guy on the bench, or in an organization or corporation, whether they're the boss or the leader of a group, or whether they're one of the guys that's taking the instruction from somebody else.
All right, Mike, here's a softball for you. Great career at Old Dominion, right? 4 great years there. How did you end up there? Were they recruiting you all along? It was a last minute decision, and anybody help you get there?
So Old Dominion was, I think, a perfect storm for me. So my senior year, back then, kids did not commit early. If I remember correctly, Coach Wooten never said don't do that, but I just think that's kind of the way he guided us. He wanted us to be able to play our senior year with some motivation. And I remember before my senior year, in the fall, I visited Radford, University, which the head coach was Oliver Purnell. I visited Virginia Military Institute, where one of the head coach was Joe Cantafio, DeMatha person, and Pete Strickland was his lead assistant, and he's the one that recruited me. And then I also was getting some interest from Virginia Tech, and Tick Price was an assistant coach at Virginia Tech. And in the spring of that year, so after my senior year, all three of them wound up at Old Dominion on staff. Coach Purnell was the head coach. He hired Tick Price and he hired Pete Strickland. So when it came time for me to make my decision, it just seemed like, I mean, those were the three schools that I was really looking at. Virginia Tech wasn't all in on Mike Jones, but VMI and Radford both were. But I had established a relationship with all three of them, and they all wound up on the same staff. And I just figured that was the sign for me to, like, that's where I need to go. And, you know, my first 2 years weren't easy. You know, I played, you know, I tell people all the time, I played one more minute my sophomore year than I did my freshman year. And my freshman year, I probably didn't deserve to play. I wasn't good enough. But my sophomore year, like, I thought I was really good and I was ready to go. And I thought about leaving. I'm glad I didn't. I wound up starting my junior year and starting my senior year. And I had a really good career that allowed me to be able to play beyond college. And I'm happy that I stuck to it.
Mike, James D'Amico, his son Joey's an 02 grad. He wants to know if you're going to go to Charleston to play golf with Joey.
Exactly. Yeah. Mr. D'Amico knows that Joey's my guy, first of all, but, you know, Mr. D'Amico knows that I definitely need to do that. I love playing golf so much. And I hope to be able to do that soon.
Now, Coach, I have a question for myself. Now, was there a specific person, maybe a coworker or student, or that inspired you or had a big impact on you during your time, or at DeMatha, or maybe someone who had a specific impact, a greater impact than during your time here?
As a student, I'd say my entire class, or my entire team, not just my class, but my team. I think back when I played at DeMatha, like, it was so competitive. There were so many really talented kids that, once I got good enough to be able to get on the floor, like, I wanted to stay on the floor. Like, I knew that every day in practice, I had to be locked in and focused. I could not take a day off because there was somebody that would take my spot if I did. And again, that's the culture of DeMatha. Because I grew up in that, when I got to college and competing every day, like, I had been doing that for 4 years. Like, I had been literally fighting for my basketball life every day that I stepped on the court for 4 years. And that was something that I think truly prepared me going forward. As a staff member, I just think there's way too many guys. Like, I mean, Neal, anybody I've coached with, Coach Murphy, Coach Vini, Coach Bellucci, all of these guys have really helped me become the coach I am. And then my players, like, I've gotten challenged many times. It's not a name dropping type of thing, but the entire Grant family, just their work ethic and the fact that they believed in me. Austin Freeman is really the first big time player that I recruited as the head coach that came to DeMatha. Steve Danley, Shaka Dickerson, Joe Hunter, those guys all, like, they were my first team. They were the core of my first team. Jermaine Green, like, those guys truly, I mean, they can tell you, like, they played on Coach Wooten's last team and my first team, man. There was a huge difference between those two teams. But they can tell you, I mean, they saw me grow. And I appreciate them because, I mean, first of all, they didn't have to stay at DeMatha. And they allowed me to make the multitude of mistakes that I made their senior year. They allowed me to do that. But I really appreciate them. And then all the guys that came after them, like, and I can, Markel Fultz's story, Victor Oladipo's story, everybody knows that. But I look at a kid like Byron Richards, who graduated in 07, with that first really great class. And Byron was someone who, played on our freshman team, played on our JV team, and played on our varsity team for 2 years, but never really played. And I will tell you, for as much work to get our kids into college, the single most proud moment I had in terms of a kid getting a scholarship was when Byron got his scholarship to American International College. I kind of knew his background a little bit, and I knew he needed that. And there was probably little chance that he would have been able to go to college if it were not for a scholarship. And Byron, to this day, is still playing basketball in Spain. And he is, if anybody follows him on social media, he does everything in Spain. Like, he teaches, he coaches, he does personal training. Like, he's a comic strip artist. He's been doing that since he was in high school, but he has a published comic strip. Like, he does. For somebody like him, like he's always been an inspiration to me.
Mike, a question from Bob Thomas, class of '84. It's kind of a deep topic, but he wants to know your thoughts on the NCAA issue of compensation for athletes.
All right, so I'm assuming he means whether or not I believe they should be compensated or not. So I believe they should. I have a different perspective than a lot of people do in terms of this. So times are way different. Like, it's crazy for me to really think about it, but like, I graduated from Old Dominion 25 years ago. Like, that's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. Like, it does not seem like that long ago. But back then, I was in a situation where I was not allowed to have a job if I wanted to. The government gives Pell Grants and things like that. Well, my family, we weren't rich, but my family made too much money for me to receive a Pell Grant from the government. So literally, the thought is, well, your parents make this much money, they can send you money. Like, the only thing I had, my parents did not send me money. Every now and then I'd beg my godfather to send me something, and I'd have to go to Western Union to pick it up. There was no Cash App or Zelle or, anything like that. So, like, literally, for me to have spending money, like, I didn't have that. So I was pretty much limited to my meal card. And then if I had a summer job, like, whatever money I saved from that. That, to me, that's not fair. There's other students on campus that can go have a job. And, I'm doing great in the classroom, but I'm doing that also while having to lift, go to study hall, do media stuff, and then go to basketball practice. But I also have to maintain a certain GPA to be able to play. And I did very well, especially after my first semester. I did very well in college academically. But yeah, I definitely think for the money that's made, for the money that, is made off of college athletics, something should be given. And a few years ago, I was actually part of a committee, and not to say that this is my idea, but the culmination of a lot of opinions, I believe this should happen. I believe that every single kid that goes to college should have to sign a contract. A student athlete should have to sign a contract, and every school or the NCAA as a whole should give them, every year they complete, they should get $10,000 put into an account. So if I go to school for 4 years and graduate, at the end of it, I get handed a check for $40,000. The key is I have to graduate to get it. So if I leave school early to go professionally, or if I flunk out or whatever happens, I do not get that money. But for those 4 years that I'm there, I get $10,000 per year. And that helps me start my life. That helps me, so what I just did, and I couldn't have a job and my time was off. So at least I'm getting something to start, because we know most kids aren't going to go pro. Hopefully they got an education, but the job market isn't the easiest thing. There's so many kids that get degrees in engineering and things like that, and they wind up having to work, you know, a totally different job. So this is an opportunity to at least help them get their life started. And I truly believe in that. I know that there's aspects that have to be tweaked, but I think that the whole concept of it is something that could be done very easily. And I think it should be done.
Mike, you're a 2-year starter at DeMatha, which is great. Not a lot of people can say that. But as you alluded to before, you're always kind of worried about playing time. You didn't want to make mistakes to stay on the floor. And then in the middle of your senior year, something changed. You went from being the guy who was afraid to make mistakes to a guy who made plays. The second half of your senior year, that's why we were so tough. Your mindset changed. Now you were the guy making plays. What happened?
To be honest with you, I'm just chalk it up to maturity. You know, I think, you know, Murphy, you can go back through, and it's almost like every team has one of those guys that in their senior year, they get it. Like something clicks and it becomes not about them anymore. And it's just a maturity thing. Like, you know, every team I've coached, I've had one of those guys too, that just at some point in time just says, you know what, I just want to win. Like that's all that's important to me. So whatever it's going to take. And, you know, I played again with really good players. We were undefeated. And Dwayne Simpkins and Vaughn Jones were like, they were the names on our team. And I probably spent the first half of my senior year wondering why I wasn't a name on the team. But halfway through that season, it became like, hey, we got a chance to make history here by going undefeated. We have a chance to end on the right note. I know I'm going to college for free, so I don't have the pressure that I just got to figure out where that's going to be. And you know what? Let's not be selfish. Let's not make this about me, and let's just play. And I was a much better player because of it.
Yeah, city title, you get a double-double, plus the play that saved it, although you say you didn't foul him. But you fouled Johnny Rhodes. You had to, we were down. And then Roman Catholic, they were as good as anybody up at Cumberland. You had a great tournament up there. It was like you completely different player. The ability was still there, but all of a sudden now you weren't afraid to make mistakes, and we were unbeatable at that point.
Yeah, it was just a different mindset. And I did not foul Johnny Rhodes. I was trying to foul Johnny Rhodes, but he was too fast. Like I literally, like I didn't touch him. But the referee, you know, you can look at it two different ways. The referee either knew I was trying to foul him and just figured I did, or the referee was trying to help Dunbar by calling a foul that didn't happen. And no matter what, it worked out for us. So who cares?
There we go.
Coach, next question from John Farrell, class of 1978. He goes, Coach, thanks for always leading by example and following our model, faith-filled gentleman and scholar. We appreciate it. His question is, can you think of one singular moment that was life-altering and possibly funny with Coach Morgan Wooten? I know it might take you a second to think, but a singular moment that was life-altering, or, you know, maybe a conversation or something, or possibly funny with Coach Wooten.
So
you on the spot.
So I have a couple. Oh man. So let's just go to. I'll tell two stories. One is literally on November 4th, 2002. I want to say. Like at that point in time, I'm the admissions director at DeMatha. I'm in my office at DeMatha doing something with admissions. You know, maybe we were getting prepared for open house, or open house had just happened. I can't remember which, but it's at night. It's like, it's dark outside. It's like 7 o'clock or something like that. And Coach Wooten appears in my doorway. And he says, you know, the first thing he asks, is there anybody else here? And I was like, no, I think everybody's gone. He's like, well, I need to talk to you. And I pretty much knew exactly what was getting ready to happen. But Coach, like, I had a couch in my office, and Coach sat down on the couch, literally sat there for 2 seconds. And before he could say anything, he's like, yeah, no, this isn't going to work. Let's walk over to my office. So we walked over across campus back to the old gym, went in his office, and he sat me down. And that's the day he told me, he was like, hey, on Friday, we're going to have a press conference. I'm going to be retiring. And, between myself, Coach Murphy, Dan McMahon, and at the time our AD was Jeff Palumbo, we had already discussed what would happen if that were to ever happen. And obviously Coach Wooten knew that as well. So that was as incredibly impactful, because that was the day that now all the things that I was hoping to accomplish one day, like, it was going to start that day. So that was a cool thing. My junior year, we're playing in Cumberland. We are playing Gonzaga. And, Coach Wooten had his way of never raising his voice, never using any profanity, but motivating anybody in any circumstance. So Coach Wooten walks into the locker room. We're playing Gonzaga, I believe, in the third place game in Cumberland. We had lost in the semifinals to somebody, to Roman maybe. And again, this great senior year, second half of the senior year that Murph was just talking about, I wasn't necessarily that player yet, but I was getting minutes. And I remember Coach walking into the locker room, and myself, Vaughn Jones, Curtis Schultz, and Kenny Blakeney, who wasn't necessarily a post player for us, but he was one of the bigger, stronger players on the team. Coach Wooten walked in with the stat sheet and talked about how many rebounds that we had collectively. And Bobby, I can see you shaking your head because you know what's coming. Like, he literally told us how many rebounds we had, and he basically, in his way, said, you know what, if you guys give that same great effort, so let's just say it was 3 rebounds total amongst us. If you guys give that same great effort in the second half, you can finish with 6 rebounds. And clearly going into this game, we feel like 6 rebounds will be plenty for us to win this game. And then he was like, if those guys are too big and strong for you, let me know. Because if they are, like, maybe we can put some of these younger guys in the game, because, I don't want you to get hurt out there. So, if you touch somebody, Mike, and maybe try to move them out of the way to get the ball. Like, he made me feel about this big. And we did not win the game. But I do know we played with a lot more energy and passion in the second half. And that was Coach's way of always, like, it's almost like a DeMatha trait. You have to have some sarcasm in your game to be able to coach and work at DeMatha. And he was absolutely the best at it.
Mike, we got 2 similar questions, I think, from Brandon Parker and Corey Canfor, both classes.
Brandon Parker, the international model. Again, guys that I'm very proud to have coached, Brandon and Corey both. Corey, just real quick, let me just say this. So Corey Canfor, he can tell you this, and Murph, you probably remember this. So my first year, we are 15 and 17, I believe.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So 15 and 17, my first year as head coach. Corey Canfor was a junior on that team. Oh, excuse me. Corey Canfor was a junior at DeMatha. We cut Corey. Corey did not make the team as a junior. A lot of people would have left. Corey had some things that he needed to fix. Let's just say that, to be fair to Corey. Corey was definitely talented, but we just did not think it was going to be a good fit. We did not have a good season. And I remember halfway through the season, and I would not encourage any young coach to do this ever, but I did. I remember being with my team in the classroom in room 217, and I gave each of them a pen and an index card and asked them to write down what they thought was wrong with the team. And if there's 15 people on the team, half maybe said you shouldn't have cut Corey. Like, it literally, I was shocked. Like, I was absolutely 100% shocked. They said you shouldn't have cut Corey. And I will always remember that. And since then, I've had guys, like, I don't know what Corey's impact would have been on the team that year. I know what his impact was a year later, because he made the team as a senior, and kind of helped us kind of get on our ascension to be a pretty good team. But I've had kids that Corey was the glue. Everybody liked Corey. Corey was going to be our voice. Corey was going to be our emotion. Corey was going to be the guy that, you know, got us up in the huddles and did things like that. And his leadership would have been so impactful on a team like that. Like, I really, like that, I took that to heart. And every team I've had since then, I've had a Corey on my team. Sometimes they're really good players that happen to have that role. And sometimes they're a guy that doesn't play as much, but again, their impact and just their presence in the locker room, in practice and things like that is that impactful that you have to have guys like that. So, Corey, if I've never said it to you, man, like, I should not have cut you, but it was Murph's fault. Like, Murph was the guy that said catch.
I always take a hit on that stuff. Actually, here's what I remember about Corey. I think we're up at Springfield, Massachusetts. We're waiting on a bus after dinner. And Austin Freeman had a game winner, I think, against Good Counsel. Corey had passed him the ball. So to kill time, Corey and Austin are running that in slow motion. Austin hitting the shot. And then Corey does the rewind where he goes back.
I remember.
Stuck with me.
Mike, much love, guys. Thank you.
Mike, I got one for you.
Well, hold on. I don't know if I answered the question because Brandon and Corey asked a similar question. So what was the question?
Yeah, Mike. So and Corey, he mentioned he's an assistant coach now at a high school in Florida. But they both asked a similar question in terms of the mindset between an assistant coach and a head coach, since you served as both, obviously. And then what was the transition like for you when you finally took over the head coaching role?
That's a great question. That's an awesome question. And I do believe I have hopefully two really good answers. One, the difference is, if you're a good assistant, the difference is, you're making suggestions versus making decisions. And a good assistant makes suggestions and don't feel some type of way if the head coach does not accept your suggestion or does not implement your suggestion. And I think that's something that a lot of us struggle with. Like, you want to play zone, but the head coach wants to play man, and you keep suggesting playing zone, but the coach doesn't do it. And how do you respond, or how do you behave, or what energy are you giving off to the players and the coaches around you, especially if the coach does not take your suggestion and you guys lose? Like, human nature is, man, if we would win zone, we would have won. And that's what, that's in your head, but you can't do that. Like, not a good assistant coach. And I do believe that that's the biggest difference. Like, you have to be humble enough and check your ego enough to understand that, hey, the head coach has his job for a reason. I'm going to make a suggestion because I truly believe in this. But ultimately, it's his call. And if I'm going to agree to be on his staff, I have to understand that and embrace it. Like, it's his call. And right or wrong, work or doesn't work, successful or unsuccessful, this is what we're going to do here, and we're going to roll with it. And I think the best assistants I've had have been able to do that. But then also, they hold me to task. So when we get into a room later on, hey, like, I really think we should have went and done this, and this is why. And being respectful enough to deliver that in the right way, one, but two, also, like, hey, man, like, you got to think outside of your box too. Like, you're not always going to be right. And that's something for head coaches to understand too. So that's one. And then the second part to that question was what, Connor? You're muted.
You're on mute, Connor.
Sorry about that. In terms of the transition for you, Mike, from assistant to head coach, how did you make that decision?
Yeah. So I joke with the kids all the time because now the players I coach, I'm old. Like, I'm really old to them. They look at me like I'm like a great grandfather or something like that. And like, I have younger coaches with me that, if something's going on the team, they're more likely to get it from a player than I would. That's hard to deal with as a coach. Like, I used to be the coach that I would sit in the hallway in Cumberland, sit at the end of the hallway, and give me 5 minutes and there'll be 10 guys sitting around me and we'd be telling stories and I'm listening to them complain about their teacher at DeMatha, and I can say, well, I had that teacher when I was there. Like, it's almost that brotherhood, whereas I am a big brother to them. But as soon as you become the head coach, I could go sit in the hallway now and they will get off the elevator or walk out of their room, look at me, and then they will walk the other way. It is like, and I like that. At first, that was really hard for me to handle. Because everybody wants to be liked, everybody wants to be cool and things like that. But I had to come to grips with that's no longer my role. And I need to make sure I have other guys around me that can fill that role because every team needs that. Every player needs a coach, not just his buddy on the team, because that's very dangerous. But when you have a coach that, first of all, you can trust that is going to support whatever the team concept is and is not in it for any other reason than to help these kids out. You need coaches like that players are comfortable going to. So that was the biggest thing for me, going from being the guy. You know, I look at my relationship with Keith Bogans all the time. I wasn't even on the varsity staff when he was a senior at DeMatha, but we spent a lot of time talking, and like I'm so appreciative of that. And because of that, I was able to, like, other guys saw Keith doing that, and you know, everybody wanted to be Keith. So, well, Keith has this great relationship with Coach Jones, so I want to have a great relationship with Coach Jones. But literally, as soon as I became the head coach, all of that went out the window.
Corey, just to clear something up, if I was listening to Mike correctly, I may have suggested you get cut, but Mike made that decision, right? Mike, quick story you can tell. You mentioned we played Gonzaga 5 times your junior year. The 4th time we played him was for the championship down at Georgetown.
Yep.
Right? And they had men, Robert Churchwell, Dave Creedle, Lamont Morgan. They were just better than us. You guys met over at, I'll say, Joe Wooten's house, because Morgan wasn't there, at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock after the game. What happened there? What'd you guys do?
So I want to say it was my idea, but I can't remember. But we shaved our heads. Well, no, actually, we didn't shave our heads. We shaved our numbers in our heads.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say this. I was already bald. So I didn't have any hair to shave 34 in my head. So I was good. But everybody else, we took the clippers and we like literally cut everybody's number in the head. That didn't go over too well. We got to school and they were like, yeah, no. Like, send everybody home. So then everybody wound up having a shaved head after that, or at least all the hair on the side was shaved and they just had the hair on top. But honestly, that was one of the coolest things that I'd ever experienced as a teammate, because everybody did it. Everybody bonded together. And for a group that we were clearly the underdogs, it was just something that we felt like brought us together and let us all know, no matter what our role was on the team, that we were all in it together. And it was awesome. We won, and we went on to the city title game because of it.
Mm-hmm. We were a very good team, and that first half was probably the best half of basketball we've ever had.
Yeah, Vaughn Jones was the best player in the world for 16 minutes.
Yep.
Now, Coach, last question. I'll end on this, and sorry if I didn't get to everyone's questions, but I got to ask this. And I know you get asked this question all the time, Coach, and you're very firm on not giving an answer. But you know, you've coached multiple players who are in the NBA currently or play overseas professionally. But you know, I'll kind of word it a little bit different. But who is the player, maybe the most talented player that you've ever coached? You know, when you've coached him, you look at the guy and, you know, in high school and we're like, man, that kid has a great future. He's going to play in the NBA, you know, or something like that. Who is maybe the guy with the most talent that you've ever coached? Not the, you know, your favorite or the best, but most talented player you've ever coached.
At DeMatha.
At DeMatha, yeah.
Okay, so 2 things. One, I know time constraints cause, you know, people to leave. I am more than happy to stay on. I don't have class until 2:20, So if you want to, I will answer all the questions that are in there. If some people have to leave, that's fine, but I will answer those questions. But to answer your question, I am not answering that question. There's no way. Not that everything has to be about winning, but there's no way I can win with an answer to that question. Like I still communicate with so many of my players. I don't feel like having those conversations. So no, I've coached a lot of great players. And you can look at it a few different ways too, Ben. Like some guys, like you said, like they're just incredibly talented, and you can look at them and say, hey, this kid is going to be able to play. But if he stays healthy and he does what he's supposed to do, this kid is going to be able to play basketball for a long time. I've had other players that were not as physically gifted, but their IQ was like just crazy. And most of those guys, you can tell that at a pretty early age. Without saying names, because I promised I wouldn't do that. Like one of the parents of one of those players is on here right now. And I truly believe that you can look at, somebody's IQ, and that's something that gets undervalued so much. But, his son is still playing the game today. And I'd like to think a big reason of that is because his IQ is so high. That's not position specific either. Like you can be a high IQ player as a point guard, which everybody wants you to be, but you can also be a high IQ player, that's a 7'2" center that's at Michigan. Like, I mean, you can like really, 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 IQ. And then you can look at it as, somebody who just plays incredibly hard. And we've had guys that have done that, they're athletic and things like that. And, they have some skill, but their biggest or best trait was just their motor and their competitive spirit. And they play so hard that, they were able to be successful and have careers because of it.
Gotcha. Connor, hold on real quick. So we'll do two more questions for Coach. So I know we got one from Charlie Kenny and one from Roger Dennis. So Connor, we'll do the last two.
Yeah, Mike, finish these last questions off. Charlie Kenny want to know, how important are the managers with what goes on for each team?
There's no way, and I'll speak about DeMatha. Actually, I'll speak about DeMatha and USA basketball. Like, the teams that I'm able to coach have been very successful, and there's no way we could be successful without the contribution that some guys that don't get any credit. It's truly, anytime I get to show up to practice and like there's so much already done that I never even had to tell someone to do, just makes everything so much easier. And I have been truly blessed to have some great managers, both with DeMatha and USA, that is something that I will never take for granted. And I don't know if Charlie knows this, and I don't know, Mr. Hathaway, if you knew this. So I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. Brendan Shea's on here, I think. But so a former manager, Chris Underwood, who is doing very well in life, has recently decided to donate back to the school. And, whereas some guys want, support to go to certain programs or, things like that within the school, Mr. Underwood has allowed us to be able to financially help some of the basketball managers that are in our program, which is something that, that's incredible. That is incredible. Chris Underwood was a manager at DeMatha, and he wants to make sure that those young men, and I remember when I got that information and I reached out to the two families that we're helping, one's a senior manager and one's a junior manager for us now. Like the kids were super excited and both mothers cried because especially during these times with the pandemic, like it was something that was really, really, really appreciated and needed. And it is truly just a blessing for someone like Chris to be able to do that. So managers they're truly the lifeblood because they do so much. Like, Jerome Lee, who's was my head manager last year, Mekhi Vance before him, Luke Farrell before him, Danny Fisher before him. Mike Corliss. Kenny Beaver was never my manager, but he was Coach Wooten's manager. Like those guys, like they truly, man. And now, Thomas Messafant and Lucas Santamaria are my two managers now. And again, I could not do, it would just be way too much to do, especially for me with my coaching staff. Most of us do not work within the building. So that a lot of that responsibility falls on my shoulders. And if I could not trust the guys I have, it would be really tough. Billy Hickman is also another manager who's probably going to be working in some NBA team. And his dream was to play basketball at DeMatha. And when he did make the team his junior year, he became a manager and became very good at it. So.
Thanks, Coach. So next one, I guess last one will be from Roger Dennis. He said that you've, held many roles at DeMatha, student, coach, administrator, et cetera. Is there a moment or moments that have made you puff your chest out as a proud DeMatha man?
That's tough. I try not to, even though human nature does. Like, I don't want to ever be seen as a guy that's poking his chest out at anything. Like, that's just not, that's not who I am. But yes, I do. I have one distinct memory back in 2018 when we won our 40th conference title. And that 40th conference title was very elusive because we had gone from 2011 to 2018 without winning one. And I didn't want to poke my chest out about winning in 2018. I wanted to poke my chest out because the talk around town and the talk everywhere was, oh my gosh, DeMatha has not won in 7 years. Well, shoot, I poked my chest out because I was just like, if this was any other school and they had not won in 7 years, who would even notice? Like, who would even notice it? Like, and no offense to Gonzaga or St. John's or Paul VI or whoever. If they go 7 years without winning a championship, they just went 7 years without winning the championship. It's not a thing. You don't have alumni saying, oh my gosh, what's going on? You don't have, parents and players wondering what the deal is. You don't even start to question yourself. You're just like, oh, we'll get back at it next year. But shoot, if we go more than 2 years without winning one, people are like, it's getting a little hot in here. Like, but you know what? That's who we are. And I love that. I could not imagine being at a place that when we start practice, the goal is not to win a championship. And it's not just the goal, it's the expectation. I don't understand what that is. And every team I've ever played for, every team I've ever coached, day one, it's not something that is just, hey, we're going after the Super Bowl or we're going after the World Championship or we expect to win. And if I ever had to be in a situation where that was not the case, I'm not sure I'd want to coach. I believe I'm too competitive for that. So, if I had to pick one instance where I poked my chest out, it was that. After we won, I couldn't wait to tell people, like, first of all, we won, so relax. But then also, just remember, if we were anywhere else, this wouldn't even be a thing.
Great, Coach. Actually, I want to ask you one more. This is from me, but how does DeMatha, to you, stand out as a high school in regards to every other high school in the country? I know you've been here, obviously graduated in 91, and then you started working here in 98. So I think it's like a total of 26 years maybe you've spent at DeMatha total. But what does DeMatha mean to you, and then how do you think it sticks out or stands out from every other high school in the country?
I think it's different. It is special. It is unique. I do not believe that what we do at DeMatha can be duplicated anywhere. Like, I truly believe that. Forget the private school, forget the single-sex school, forget the Trinitarian, because we're the only Trinitarian high school. Like, forget all of those nuances that make us different from others. But what truly makes us unique is, And I firmly believe this. There is not another school that you can go to that when you walk in the door, you are amongst the elite, but not the negative connotation of that word. Like, I remember my freshman year, I could sit back, and to my right in my math class was a kid that never watched a basketball game in his life. But he was all about his business to be first chair in the wind ensemble. And then to my left, there was a kid who, played rugby or something like that. And I didn't even know what rugby was, but he wanted to be the best rugby player. And then sitting in front of me was the kid that, like, he all he loved was science. Like, he wanted to be like an incredible science student and, to go into science, whether it became a doctor or, some type of developer of, vaccines and things like that. So you were surrounded by excellence and excellence-driven people. And I don't think that you look at DeMatha kids, and though the athletic program gets so much, like the funny thing is, and when I used to be the admissions director, we talk about this all the time. Like, there are schools that are known for their academics. There are schools that are known for their sports. How many schools are known for both? And we are. And then within the athletics, there's schools that are known for having a good basketball team or a good football team. But how many have a school of just elite athletics for all of them? We are. Like, how many schools can say, well, their music program's really good, but the rest of their programs are, like, you can't say that about us. Like, we are truly as diverse as you can possibly be in every sense of that word. And I think that's what really makes us unique. And to talk to people from other schools from around the area and then from around the country, like, how many, like that one DeMatha is truly, like, it's one DeMatha. Like, if you hear the name DeMatha, you know what you're talking about. There's nothing else that you could possibly be referring to. So I coached a college all-star team that played in Belgium a few years ago. And, like, literally, the guy that organized it asked us to, when we were flying over, to wear the T-shirt or sweatshirt or whatever from where you represent. I wore a DeMatha shirt. I had a kid from Notre Dame. I had a kid from St. John's. I had a kid from Tennessee. I had a kid from Lycoming College in Pennsylvania. But I had 2 kids from Kansas State. Like, and we're in the airport. So many people walked up to me to ask me about DeMatha. And again, I'm not a fool. Like, there's a kid, Scott Martin, is standing next to me with the Notre Dame shirt on. And there were so many people that walked up to me to ask me about DeMatha. And, like, I kind of, Mr. Dennis, that's another moment that I got to poke my chest out, because, like, hey, we've got all of these fine institutions. I'm high school. These are all colleges and universities. And these people are walking up to me to ask me about Coach Wooten, and to ask me about, is that school that, and then, this story. James Brown is obviously a huge ambassador for us in all the things that he's done. Like, I get so many people that just, hey, did James Brown really play basketball? And, like, ask me about him because they know I'm from DeMatha. Like, it is something, like, what other school, like, no matter how good they are at something, what other school can talk about just all aspects of so many different things? There's only one DeMatha, and that's the truest sentiment ever said.
Coach, that's very well said, man. That's great. Thank you so much. So I think that's going to conclude our afternoon with Coach Jones. Obviously, thank you to you, Coach, and for everyone who joined, and for your terrific questions as well. It's always a pleasure chatting with you, Coach. And this goes without saying, but thank you for everything you do, not only for DeMatha but for the community at large. DeMatha is very blessed to have you, and it's always an honor speaking with you. I'm sure I'll see you around campus or in the weight room, these next few days. But until then, stay safe, Coach. And thank you again so much for your time today.
Well, thank you, guys. I appreciate everybody.
Thanks, guys.